I see that you went to Alabama for college, but you're from Georgia. How did Georgia lose out on you?
Well, I actually was born in Georgia. My father played football after he finished with the war at the University of Alabama. And my mother was a teacher and a professor at the University of Georgia. And what happened when Dad was in Naval Pre-Flight School when he was in the Navy, he met my mom, and even when he was at Alabama, him and Mom, continued seeing each other and dating and stuff like that.
So did Bear Bryant recruit you personally?
I'm sorry, I understand you.
Did Bear Bryant come into your home and recruit you?
Oh, he did when my little brother David signed. My dad, what happened is when Dad got out of the Navy, he had a good friend of his that is in the Navy, a guy by the name of Doc McCants, who was from South Carolina. And, my dad grew up pretty rough as a sharecropper and all that stuff. And he, Doc basically talked Dad into going to college, and Dad said, well, who'd take me? And Rock was a big Clemson fan. So Dad went up to Clemson and said, well, tell you what, he said, I got a half a VA scholarship. If y'all give me a half football scholarship, give me a bed to sleep in, 3 meals a day, I'd love to come play football for y'all. And they said, well, Herb, we can give you the half scholarship and we can give you a bed to sleep in, but we only give you 2 meals a day. So Dad went down to the University of Alabama, and there's a guy there who had coached Dad when he was in the Naval Pre-Flight School at Georgia, Hank Chris, and basically he agreed to Dad's terms. So basically for, one price of 1 meal, Dad went to the University of Alabama. And not only that, my Uncle Bill played there, I played there, my brother Charlie played there, and my brother David played there. So for the price of 1 meal, they got 5 Hannahs.
Who ended up eating a lot of meals at the Crimson Tide training table?
Yeah, my dad gave me no choice. I mean, he did, but he didn't. He said, well, I was thinking my uncle was out at Cal State Fullerton, and he was coaching out there, and he said, well, if you're thinking about some other place beside Alabama, you ought to think about Southern Cal. And I said, okay. And so I said, anyway, talking to Dad about it, and Dad said, well, that's great. Because you can go to any school you want to, but you just got to worry about where you're going to eat supper when you come home. So I guess it's pretty well decided.
What was Bear Bryant like?
I had a high school coach that played for him, and I think he said it best. He said he wouldn't take $1 million for the experience, but you couldn't pay him $1 million to go through it again. He was very tough. He demanded a whole lot from his players. And, I think when I was there, he basically ruled by fear.
Now, when you were in Alabama, you also did some wrestling and some tracks. So that didn't get you out of spring practice or anything?
No. What we did is, when I signed, I said, well, Coach, I asked if I could play, proper track or wrestling. And they said, sure. So what I did, the only days it'd get me out of spring practice if we had a meet. I never got to practice throwing the shot or wrestling or anything. I just basically went and competed, but never got to really practice that much, except, all it got me out of was some of the winter gym classes. That was all.
Bear Bryant said you were the greatest lineman he ever coached. How did you feel when he said that?
I remember what he said the last time I talked to him. I was at the university. We're getting ready to go play Texas in the Cotton Bowl. And, we hadn't started yet. It was the first day of meetings. So, I've been getting a lot of letters from the NFL, and some things were floating around. So I said, I went up to him. We were heading into a meeting, and he was there, and I said, Coach Bryant, I said, I don't want to talk about this now because I don't want to worry about getting off my mind off the game. But I said, the draft is in late January, and what I'd like to do is when this game's over with, I was hoping I could come talk to you, and you might advise me in hiring an agent. And Coach Bryant looked at me square in the eye, and he said, John, you ain't good enough to need no damn lawyer. So, I think that's what he really thought of me, not what he said later on.
As you anticipated the NFL draft, did you have a pretty good idea that you'd be a top 5 pick? You ended up going number 4 pick to the New England Patriots in the first round in 1973.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think I'd go that high, to be honest with you. I thought I'd be about second or third rounder maybe, but I didn't think it'd be that high. But Fairbanks had I was short, I was barely 6'3", almost 6'3", 1 to 2, depending on who had the measuring rod. And everybody thought I was too short, primarily because of my arm length. But Fairbanks, I think, realized that although I was only 6'3", I had a 37-inch sleeve length, which means I'm probably the only guy that can scratch his ankle without bending over. So that abnormality in my physique, I guess, allowed me to have the long arms to keep that pass rush away from me once I finally learned how to use it. And, I think he saw that and was willing to take that chance. And basically, he took a lot of ridicule for drafting me so high.
What was it like when you joined the Patriots?
It wasn't much of an organization, to be honest with you. It was like a step down from the University of Alabama. I was used to playing in Birmingham, where we played in front of 80,000 people, and here I go to, Patriots, and their stadium only held about 55,000. Football wasn't the same up there. There was more New York Giant fans than there was Patriot fans. The facilities were just awful compared to what we had in Alabama. So it was really a step down. I was shocked that it was so bad.
And your first coach there was Chuck Fairbanks, who,
right. I think he's the best coach I ever had. Matter of fact, in my opinion, he is the best coach I ever had.
What made him so good?
He wasn't intimidated by anybody. He surrounded himself with people that were smarter than him, and he listened to them. He didn't have a big ego. He had great organizational skills, probably the best I've ever seen. And he just had an eye for talent, not only in players, but in coaches. And he listened to his players. He wasn't dictatorial. If his players, if he disagreed with his players, he'd do what he wanted to do. But he'd listen and, and say, take it into consideration when he made decisions. And I just thought he liked offense, which, was something unusual for me with Coach Bryant. Offense for him was like a necessary evil. But, Coach Fairbanks, he liked offense. And that fit me fine.
Now, in that 73 draft, the Patriots also had another first-round pick in Sam Cunningham.
Had 2 first-rounders. Had Sam Bam and Darryl Stingley.
Okay. So they had themselves a pretty good draft.
Yeah, it was a great draft, I was very fortunate to play with both of them. And, it was just really, I think that 73 draft and then the 76 draft were, probably the best drafts that the Patriots ever really had. I in my opinion, we got some great players in 73. We got Steve Nelson in 74. Got Grogan in 74, 75. And then, 76, we got Mike Haynes, Tim Fox, and Pete Rock. So that was a pretty good draft.
I mean, Darryl Stingley was a talent. It was a shame when he got injured with Jack Tatum there because he could have had a long career.
Oh, yeah, Darryl was a great player. As a matter of fact, he was really just coming into his own, when he got hurt. And not only was he a great ball player, but he's a really good human being. And, it was, it's a devastating blow for our team. But, Coach Fairbanks, did what he always does. He went out and got a trade, and all of a sudden here he comes, and he brings in Harold Jackson. So, Harold Jackson came in and filled in pretty good. So we had Harold Jackson on one side and Stanley Morgan on the other. So it was pretty good. And he, like I say, Coach Fairbanks had an eye for talent. He needed how to bring it in.
And you had a pretty good tight end in Russ Francis.
Had a real good tight end in Russ Francis. When Russ wanted to strap it on, there wasn't a better tight end in the league.
How quickly did you know that you were going to be successful on the NFL level?
I never did. If you ever think you're going to be a success, you let up.
Who gave you the toughest time? What defensive lineman?
Pass rush?
Yes.
All around, run block, what?
Pass, run, and all around.
Different. Well, all around, probably I'd say, it's between Joe Klecko and Howie Long. Those are the two toughest all-around ball players I ever played against. There are a few others. I think, Doug English was real good. Mike Reed was real good. Then you got pass rushers. It's hard to beat Alan Page and Randy White. They're awful good pass rushers. The best I ever went against anyway, in my opinion. Hans Johnson wasn't too bad either at San Diego. And then run, well, the fridge, for one thing, it's like trying to move a side of a warehouse. It's so darn big. And then, oh, man, I can see him, and he came with the Patriots for a while. I can't think, for Pittsburgh. The little short but strong and tough. Oh, what was his name? Greenwood, Joe Green,
Nope.
Dwight White, and when I want to think of his name, I can't think of it. I can't think.
Oh,
But
no.
he was a tough guy too.
And then you ended up with one of the worst coaches in Patriots history, Ron Meyer.
I promised myself not to say anything bad about folks. let's steer clear of that one.
Now, when you came into
Ron
the league,
was, huh?
go ahead.
I didn't hear you.
When you came into the league at quarterback, you had Jim Plunkett. What was he like? What was he like?
Jim was a great guy and a great quarterback. The problem was, when we were running 4 and 5 man patterns, which meant that the quarterback needed to get his ball off in 2.8 to 3 seconds. And unfortunately, Jim, when you timed in a 40, well, you had to bring a sandwich, to do it. And he was pretty slow, but, had an arm, he could hit the eye of a needle at 50 yards. So what happened, he went out to San Francisco and had the same results. And the reason why, they were running 4 and 5 man patterns. But when he got to the Raiders, they were running 3 or 4 man patterns, which meant they always had another guy in there to help blocking, which basically bought him another second, because now you're talking about 3.5 to 4 seconds to get rid of the ball. And that fit, when Jim found that extra half a second, he tore people up. And he was that kind of quarterback. He fit into that scheme, and he was just, his talent finally got displayed. I mean, you know what I'm trying to say? He just didn't fit into that quick release type of offense like we had. We got to get back, set, and throw. But where he could sit back there in that rocking chair with the Raiders, shoot, he tore people up.
But Grogan was your leader. I mean, you had about 8-10 successful years with Grogan, made multiple playoffs, made that Super Bowl.
Yeah, Grogan probably was the best quarterback I've ever played with. And he was a great quarterback. And it was a travesty the way his career ended, because a lot of the coaches that, the assistant coaches and that came in afterwards, and I think maybe the owners, because they had invested so much, tried to put faith in, another quarterback that we had drafted who probably had great skills, but maybe didn't have the courage that Grogan had.
When I think of Tony Easton, I think of that Super Bowl against the Bears with Wilbur Marshall, Otis Wilson, and Hampton on top of him, which was the cover of SI.
Yeah, I remember that too.
I think the defensive lineman you were thinking of with the Steelers was Ernie Holmes.
You got it, Ernie Holmes. That's very silent. Yeah. Yeah, Ernie was one. He was one tough dude.
What was that Super Bowl game, Super Bowl 20, like for the Patriots? Because you're going up against one of the great defenses, if not the greatest defense in NFL history.
Well, it was a unique defense because, Buddy Ryan realized that you can always send one more guy than the offense can block. And it gave everybody a lot of headaches until they started figuring it out. And then they had great talent. You had Richard Dent, was a great pass rusher. You had Dan Hampton, a great ball player. Dave Tipton, who used to be with us, and the dumb coaches we had traded him away. That was that era that you were talking about previously that I didn't want to comment on. But anyway, there was a great defense. Had great linebackers, had great defensive backs. If you remember that year, the only team that beat them was Miami. And the reason they beat them, if you remember that game, they dropped back and they ran what they call a turmoil. The quarterback would drop back, everybody would shoot, they'd send the blitz, and then Reno would basically roll away from the blitz. And that bought them an extra second, and Dupree and them were able to, get open then. Buddy Ryan says, I can cover anybody for 2 seconds, man on man, and you ain't going to have it 2 seconds because I'm going to blitz more than you can pick up. And, Sheila said, well, no, you can't because I'm going to roll my quarterback out and you won't get to him in 2 seconds. And he was able to beat him that way.
Raymond Berry said the problem he had was he basically, when he took over that team, he tried to keep it simple, and he said if he would have had more time with the team, he would have been ready for that Bears defense.
I think that's probably true. And that I think another thing that hurt us, there was in the middle of the week, there was an emotional letdown. Rumors spread throughout the offense that Groves was going to be ready to play, and the whole offense got excited about it, and they were, we were lifted up, man. I mean, I'm telling you, we were lifted up. The Groves were going to be back. And all of a sudden the coaches came in after a practice one day and said, Grogan's ready, but, Tony's got the starting nod. And I think a lot of the guys basically were let down because of that. And there was a real feeling in the locker room that, and I think that hurt us emotionally. Plus, there were a lot of things going on. We found out after the game, some of the guys that were being, there was some article that the Boston Globe reporter had regarding, drug issues and things like that. So everybody was thinking about what was coming in the newspaper the day after the game. And it was just kind of, it's crazy. So, we got there, but we weren't all there when the game actually was played. Not that we could have, beat them, but I think we could have probably got it a lot closer.
Now you teamed with Leon Gray, who was a tackle, to form one of the great left sides in NFL history.
Yep.
Did you guys form a bond of sorts?
The closest of bonds. When they traded Leon away, I was madder than a hornet. That was 1979, and I love Leon. I thought the world of it, and it was the worst thing they could have done for our team, and it was the worst thing they could have done for Leon. Leon was a great athlete.
You think they traded him away because? Do you think they traded him away because you and he held out in '77?
Oh yeah, that's exactly why they did it. And we were going to be coming up for contract. You know, we played out. We got 78, 79, 80 was our last contract year. So after 1980, Big Dog and I were going to do the same thing. We were both be up for contract at the same time. So what they did, they got rid of it.
And Elvin Bethea said that was the happiest day of his life when Gray got traded to the Oilers.
Absolutely, wouldn't you? If you had one of the greatest offensive linemen in the league, at that, I mean, shoot fire. I'd be happy too if I was Elvin. There's no question about it. But I wasn't happy, and I let it be known. I was very, very upset. I was very angry when I found out about it.
That was another good move by Ron Meyer.
That was before him, but it was still the whole thing basically it was Les Steckel. When Fairbanks left, the owners kind of gave more power to Les Steckel than they gave to Ron Earhart. And Les Steckel knew how to play the politics. And, he wanted control. And he did more to screw up the Patriots than anybody that ever been there while I was there. And he was awful. Not Les Steckel. Les Steckel was the offensive coordinator. Who's Dick Steinberg? Dick Steinberg was the guy. He was awful. He was awful.
Do you have a favorite block that you ever made in the course of your career?
Say what?
Is there one play that stands out in your career, a block that you made that may be one of the highlights?
No. I think there's certain games that might stand out that I remember, but not individual plays so much.
How did it feel when you were named the number one guard on the 75th anniversary NFL team?
That was pretty good. Felt good. It was just, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and to be named that, it was pretty special.
Now, you had two brothers who played in the NFL. Was there anybody in the Hanna family that ended up as a running back?
I have one. My dad played in the NFL, and my brother Charlie played in the NFL, but my David, my youngest brother, didn't get to because of knee injuries.
Okay. Charlie got a Super Bowl ring, right?
Yeah, that's another story.
He never shows that off, does he?
Well, what happened, that was in '83, and I was trying to get traded. And, I found out some this last week, couple of weeks with ESPN, they were talking about how Irsay had talked to the Solomons and were going to trade Elway if they gave me to them and maybe another draft choice or something like that, and the Patriots wouldn't trade me. Well, what I was hoping was I heard there was some interest with the Raiders, so I was hoping I'd go with the Raiders, and I think Al was trying to get a hold of me. So Charlie, my brother, was down in Tampa, and he wanted to stay in Tampa, but he wanted to make a little more money. So we were both sitting at home in Alabama, and one Friday or Saturday night, we went to the catfish place to eat some catfish and hush puppies. And Charlie wasn't showing up. So finally he came in. He's all hang dog, his head was bowed. And he said, "Oh, I said, what's wrong?" He said, "I've been traded." I said, "Where you been traded?" And he said, "The Raiders." I said, "You sorry son of a gun. You stole my job." So he goes out to the Raiders, gets to where they change his number to 73. They instead of playing tackle, they move him to left guard, and he wins the Super Bowl. So
maybe they're trying to convince people that they got John Hanna instead of Charlie Hanna.
Well, yeah. I mean, Al basically, Charlie tells me, he says, when he was out there and Al came up to Charlie, says, "Charlie, you know why we got you, don't you?" And Charlie said, "No." He says, "Because the Patriots wanted 2 number 1s for John." And he said, "He's good, but he's not worth 2 number 1s. The Tampa Bay only wanted a 4th rounder for you."
Another one of your teammates got traded to the Raiders, and Mike Haynes.
Yeah, Mike Haynes, Don Hasselbeck, quite a few of them went out there. And wasn't Shelby Jordan out there for a while?
Right.
And all had good careers out there. But, I got to enjoy being with the Sullivan family.
How did you know when it was time to call it a career?
Huh?
How did you know when it was time?
A career?
Yes, sir.
I was very good friends with the orthopedic surgeon that we got, Bert Zarens. And I torn a posterior cruciate in 1977, which the trainer and the doctors basically had told me that it was a strain. But anyway, it never got better, so when I went to a legitimate doctor, they actually told me that it was torn. But back then, they couldn't do what they could do now. They were going to have to reroute the hamstring in the front of the knee, and he said it is only about 50% successful. So I went to Bert, and I said, "Well, Bert, here's the deal." I said, "If you ever see a situation where, you think I could cripple myself for life, I want you to tell me." He said, "All right." So after the Bears game, I'd already had, both my shoulders operated on, and once that healed up, before I could kind of get around a little bit, they decided to work on my knee. So I went in for my knee surgery, and after I got out, he called me down to his office. I went there. He said, "John, you remember what you asked me?" I said, "Yeah." He says, and he started telling me about everything. I said, "Well, what does that mean?" And he said, "Well, John, I tell you," he says, "you could play. But if I had another job that I could make a living at, I think I'd do that instead." And so that's what it was. It was my left knee. That's caused me to end my career. And, I would hope I was hoping to get at least 3 more years in. But because they had lied to me and told me it was a strained ligament instead of a torn one and let me go ahead and get it fixed, during the season, it cut my career short.
When you went in the Hall of Fame, what was going through your mind?
I can't believe I'm here. Why am I sitting with all these guys?
Did you have a favorite player growing up?
Yeah, I mean, Green Bay was kind of my team. Because, we didn't have any professional teams here, but we followed Alabama, Alabama players. And I always liked Bart Starr. And so when I started watching Green Bay, I started watching their line. And so, Fuzzy Thurston became a favorite of mine.
I see that your brother was at the bowl championship game last year when Alabama played Notre Dame. Were you there too?
No, I was watching it on TV. I was the smart one.
How come you weren't an Alabama quarterback? It seems like they get the beautiful women all the time. Bart Starr, the quarterback now.
I know. That's part of it. That's the quarterbacks. They have the time and they're not too beat up, especially nowadays. So they get all the gals. Us old offensive linemen, we're all scarred up, fat, and beat up, so they don't want to be around us. I had to tie a pork chop around my neck just to get my dog to come to me.
Did you have a favorite running back to block for?
You named him a little while ago. I think there's two, well, maybe three, that I would say. I love to block for Mac Heron. I love to block for Andy Johnson. Andy Johnson was the smartest running back I think I ever blocked for. And then I love to block for Sam Cunningham. That guy was unbelievable. He had it all. He was a great athlete.